Yo, what up? This is Josh Rubin from East West Healing and Performance. Today I want to talk about the benefits of gelatin and broth. Now, I've done a YouTube on this before. I forget what I called it. I did it a long time ago. Maybe I called it the benefits of gelatin and broth. I'm not sure. But I want to do a little bit more and add a little bit to it. Now, I'm actually taking this directly from the protein lesson in the Metabolic Blueprint. Of course, if you're interested in the Metabolic Blueprint, 8-week teleseminar program with 4 bonus lessons, over 400 pages of documenting information on understanding the GI system, the hormonal system, the immune system, the detox system, understanding body temperature and pulse and oxidative stress, understanding carbs, proteins, and fats, how to use food as your supplement, nutrition and exercise, nutrition and sleep, light therapy for healing, and carbon dioxide made simple. It's a teleseminar program. If you want to learn more about it, go to the description part of this YouTube. You can click on the Metabolic Blueprint link and check it out. At the same time, don't forget to check out our Metabolic Blueprint cookbook, which is actually more of a startup guide. It's cheaper. It's $37. It's a quick startup guide to our larger Metabolic Blueprint program. Of course, there's recipes in it. There's over 80 recipes. But there's also information on understanding carbs, proteins, fats, calcium, dairy, coconut oil, things like that. So there's a lot of information. And if you want to buy it, go to the link at the bottom in the description page, and you can check it out, read more about it, or order it, and get it delivered right to your computer ASAP. Enough about that. So, why do I want to talk about this? Well, it's been... Just lost my complete train of thought. First off, depending on how long this takes me, this could be a 2-part YouTube. Not sure yet, timing myself. But I want to talk about what it is, the benefits of it for our body, and the basics of maybe how to use it. Now, of course, we recommend Great Lakes Gelatin, greatlakesgelatin.com. We recommend most people start by using the hydrolyzed gelatin, which is the green bottle. What I find is people that are using the non-hydrolyzed, the orange bottle, it's very thick and gooey. It only dissolves in hot water, and even then it can actually clump, and it causes a lot of digestive upset for people. So if you're going to start using it, you can start with the green bottle. Now, what is gelatin? Gelatin is the connective tissue of the animal. It makes up over 50% of the protein content in the animal. And once again, it's actually void of tryptophan and cysteine. Now, I've talked about in many of my YouTubes why we recommend broth over muscle meats. Now, I'm not saying all my clients don't use muscle meats. We use them, but I always recommend people having a small amount of the muscle meat, always with the broth. The frequency depends on the person, depends what's going on with their temperatures and pulses, their gut, how they're healing, how they're not healing. All these factors play into it. But broth and gelatin, they don't have tryptophan and cysteine like muscle meats, and tryptophan converts to serotonin and melatonin, which is highly inflammatory, causes leakiness of the capillaries and blood vessels, which leads to inflammation, sodium loss, albumin loss, detoxification issues, etc. So it's highly inflammatory. So in a sense, broth and gelatin, you're getting this high protein content, and over 35% of the gelatin is glycine, alanine, proline, and hydroxyproline, which are actually anti-inflammatory. And it doesn't contain tryptophan and cysteine, so we could say that broth and gelatin in itself are actually anti-inflammatory. Now, you know the whole philosophy of our way of doing things is kind of like Ray's. Of course, we've adopted a lot of his philosophies. The whole goal to regulate cellular energy production, because that's our goal, to heal the body from the inside out, is to eliminate things in your life and food that are creating excitatory things to happen in the body. Eliminate things that are affecting and inhibiting cellular energy production, and to bring things into your life, food of course, that are facilitating energy production. And if you think about it, broth will do that because there's nothing inflammatory about it. Now, of course, it comes down to the quality of the bone, what you're using. I like when people use marrow bones or knuckle bones. You can always use oxtail and things like that. We don't recommend people using chicken bones. You can, but it's not the best because chickens are not ruminant animals. They can't convert unsaturated fats to saturated fats. So you're going to get a higher unsaturated fat content with the chicken bones. With the cow or whatever you're using bones, you're going to get more of what's the word I'm looking for? The Jell-O-y like consistency, and you're not going to get a lot of those unsaturated fats in the broth itself. Of course, it comes down to the bone that you're using. What type of animal did it come from, and what was the animal actually being fed? But we like the marrow bones and the knuckle bones. Marrow bones, you're going to get more of the immunocytes for your immune system from the bone marrow, and the knuckle bones because it adds a lot of collagen, which is high in protein. but it also makes the broth nice and gelatinous, which is great for people with GI issues. Now, the key with this is never to drink broth alone, and I'll talk about this towards the end. But let's look at some of the benefits of broth and gelatin. Now, for me, especially with people with GI issues, especially people that are severely hypometabolic, I prefer people use broth over gelatin first, and then as they start healing, we can add in the gelatin as needed to make it a little bit easier during their day, to get in more protein content, to get in more of this anti-inflammatory protein. Now, a lot of this information is taken from Ray's work, his article on gelatin, from the work of Clive McKay, and the work of N.R. Gotthoffer. He wrote a book called Gelatin in Nutrition and Medicine. So, let's begin. And I'm just going to read off, it's kind of outlined, give you the basics, and once again, this is right from the Metabolic Blueprint. Gelatin does not contain tryptophan and cysteine, as we mentioned, which is inflammatory. So it doesn't contain it, so it's anti-inflammatory. And according to Clive McKay, he says, quoting him, restricting only tryptophan or only cysteine produces a greater extension of lifespan than achieved in most of the studies of caloric restriction. Quite interesting, because tryptophan converts to serotonin, converts to melatonin, which is highly inflammatory, highly immunosuppressive, can have a negative impact on the GI system, increase leakiness in the blood vessels, and just literally lead towards altered cell energy metabolism. Gelatin is broken down in the body and actually can aid in wound healing, suppress tumor growth. Estrogen stimulates tumor growth and can be converted by serotonin, and actually can reduce inflammation. Gelatin assists in inhibiting the formation of new blood vessels, as seen with tumor growth. Now, let's see if I can remember this. Anytime we're in a hypometabolic state, anytime we have altered energy production with any diseases, our body loses sodium. This stimulates aldosterone. Aldosterone stimulates what's called VEGF, vascular endothelium growth factor, which increases capillary leakiness and the formation of new blood vessels. So by using broth and gelatin, getting the fluids, getting the minerals, of course with carbohydrates and fat, that's a key. Adding salt to it to downregulate aldosterone, you're actually going to downregulate the production of new blood vessels in tumor growth. According to N.R. Gotthoffer in Nutrition and Medicine, his book on gelatin, gelatin can aid in digestion of milk and milk products. And the reason being is because gelatin itself in broth has been shown to actually stimulate hydrochloric acid production better than most solid proteins out there, because it doesn't run the risk of actually having putrefaction, because it's a liquid, it can be absorbed, and it's not going to putrefy just like muscle meats or chicken would, or pork, or any type of meat. Gelatin has a sparing effect on proteins, which means the body is less likely to catabolize muscle tissue protein, during stress or during fasting or malnutrition. Fasting meaning you're not eating enough during the day. So in the presence of gelatin or broth, the body, if it gets pushed into this catabolic state, because you're not regulating blood sugar, remember, your cells need glucose, and if you're not meeting those needs, your body's going to break down muscle tissue, protein, to convert it to glucose, gluconeogenesis. So in the presence of broth and gelatin, Clive McKay and N.R. Gotthoffer and Ray have shown that your body will catabolize your own tissues less and use the protein and the amino acids in the broth instead. So it has a sparing effect on proteins or muscle proteins in your body. Another person I forgot that we got a lot of this information from was Voigt, V-O-I-T. He found that it's peptogenic, it aids in gastric secretion, thus promoting digestion. So it's a great way to promote digestion in people that are constipated, that have severe digestive issues. Remember, your whole GI system is actually pH driven. A lot of it starts in the mouth, of course, but a lot of people think just the stomach, which is highly acidic, or should be. Broth and gelatin stimulating hydrochloric acid production, gastric secretion, and peptogenic aids can actually aid in regulating the pH of the entire GI system. Gelatin itself has been shown to actually regulate or reduce inflammation in the mucous membranes in the stomach itself, but also the entire GI system. Gelatin can actually increase blood levels of calcium, thus downregulating the inflammatory hormone parathyroid and downregulate bone catabolism. Anytime any tissue or any cell is stressed in your body, it gets excited, it holds onto calcium and loses sodium. A lot of the minerals in the broth can actually help prevent this by downregulating aldosterone, allowing your cells to release calcium, as well as healing the gut. And that's where in the small intestine you actually absorb most of your calcium. So it can be very beneficial to absorption of calcium in the body, as well as downregulating parathyroid hormone, which can actually stimulate prolactin and actually stimulate bone catabolism to increase calcium. So it's inflammatory. So using broth and gelatin, not supplements, along with calcium sometimes from eggshells, you can actually downregulate PTH and downregulate inflammation and bone catabolism, as well as because of gelatin broth's effect on estrogen and progesterone, which we'll talk about. Now, there's glycine in broth. We'll talk a lot about that. Glycine in broth and gelatin has been used in the synthesis to make hemoglobin, bile salts, glutathione, which is a huge part of the detox system, nucleotides, DNA, and RNA. Now, anytime you're estrogen dominant, your cells are taking up calcium, it doesn't really matter. You lose blood volume, you have increased heme production, and from that, what happens is estrogen stimulates carbon dioxide. So glycine can help regulate hemoglobin levels in the body by down-regulating this entire process. Broth contains high amounts of immunoglobulins to support the immune system, especially if you're using marrow bones. Now, let's talk a little bit about the glycine. Glycine is found in gelatin and broth, among other amino acids, but it's very important. It has a lot of different actions or mechanisms in the body. Glycine is used in gluconeogenesis and has been shown to be low with hypoglycemia, so it can actually regulate blood sugar. Glycine aids in phase 2 detoxification of the liver by supporting the synthesis of glutathione. We just talked about that. Remember, carrageenan, that's found in a lot of dairy products, pâtés, hot dogs, ketchup, etc., affects phase 2 detoxification. So glycine, as well as nutrition that you're doing in eliminating carrageenan, can help support phase 2 detoxification by upregulating glutathione production. You don't need to spend money on fancy supplements or glutathione, just increase your broth intake. Glycine opposes estrogen and favors progesterone. That's why it regulates hemoglobin production, and that's why it actually can downregulate PTH in the effects on bone catabolism. It can actually inhibit that process that's going on. So we can say that broth, in a sense, is anti-estrogenic and is actually pro-progesterone, which is what we want because it's a protective hormone in the body. Glycine can assist in wound healing because of a lot of the immunoglobulins, because it's progesterone sparing and it's anti-estrogenic. Glycine facilitates the action of insulin, which can help reduce blood sugar handling issues, hypothyroidism, and diabetes. And glycine actually inhibits lipolysis, thus preventing hypoglycemia. So it prevents the breakdown of free fatty acids and the use of fats by our cells. And it can stop that process and thus facilitating the use of glucose by the cell. Glycine, like carbon dioxide, which is energy producing, that's what our cells want to produce, is protecting our body against oxidative damage, so we could say it's an antioxidant. Glycine is inhibitory to neurotransmitters and actually can promote natural sleep because it can downregulate serotonin, doesn't have tryptophan, it's anti-estrogenic and pro-progesterone, so it's a great thing or adjunct that you can use at night with your carbohydrates and salt. Glycine is inhibitory to the effects of estrogen, as I just mentioned. It's nerve stabilizing and antispasmodic. So that's kind of the end of my rant here of the benefits of broth and gelatin. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. I'm going to continue on the next YouTube and just talk about maybe how to use it, the different types, how much to use and when to use it, in the basics, because it's going to be different for everyone. So hopefully you've enjoyed this YouTube clip. Stay tuned for the next one on how to use gelatin, when to use it, and the types that you can use. Peace.